I've been thinking a lot about clarity lately. It's something I help people find, and I want to talk about what I actually mean by that. I often say that I help people take themselves from confusion to clarity. And I've noticed that when people hear that, they sometimes think I mean certainty. Like you'll suddenly have all the answers, like things will feel settled forever. Like once you're clear, you're done. And that's not actually how I understand clarity at all. I think we've been taught in society, culturally, that clarity and certainty are the same thing. That if we're clear, we shouldn't feel doubt anymore. That fear should disappear. That the question should stop. But when I look at real life, especially during transitions, that's just not how it works. When looking at various transitions, there are certainly patterns and commonalities, and yet it's been said over and over that each time is still unique. We can know the signs of labor and birth and death, but we will never know exactly what the story will be until we live it or witness it. We can think we know how we'll respond to a loss and be completely caught off guard by how we end up grieving. There could be things pointing towards change, but we can't know what the final shift will look like. If certainty were required before we could move, most of us would never begin. For me, clarity isn't about knowing what's going to happen. It's not about having the whole carefully detailed map. And it's definitely not about being free of doubt. Clarity is orientation. Now, I'm thinking about REM's song Stand. Stand in the place where you live, now face north. And it's exactly like that. It's knowing what matters, what your values are, what your North Star is. It's knowing what you can say yes to and what you can say no to, even if the rest is still unfolding. Clarity is about being able to stay connected to yourself while things are uncertain. This is where the labyrinth comes in for me. And some of you may have been seeing a lot of my content lately has been about labyrinths and a labyrinth walk that I did recently. There's one way in, one way out. It's not about having the path memorized and doing it blindfolded in your sleep. It's about finding your way at your pace. When you walk a labyrinth, you never see the whole path at once. You step off and do things because you'd be too busy trying to look ahead. You just see the next few steps, and that's enough. You can walk it quickly or slowly. You could do it dancing. You can resist it or soften into it. The path doesn't change, but your experience of it does. That's how clarity works too. Something I hear a lot is, I feel like I should be more sure by now, or if I were really clear, I wouldn't still be doubting myself. But doubt doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Doubt often just means you care. You care about making decisions that are going to benefit you or your loved ones. And I think about my own experience where I found this clarity of, I know what I want to do and I know what I want to be, and then still just living with all of this doubt and imposter syndrome and but and I was on, I'd been invited to like a Zoom where, you know, it was just kind of this open forum. And, you know, I volunteered to have some advice given to me. And so they were intuiting quite a lot of things that, you know, when you like, when somebody sees you, and it's so wonderful to be seen, but sometimes it's like, oh, you're seeing all this stuff that it doesn't make me feel good about myself either. And, you know, they were noting all kinds of things. And then it got opened up. Well, now you're welcome to ask questions if you want to ask any questions. And I asked, it just kind of, you know, I feel very put on the spot usually in those kinds of situations. My ADHD can make it really tough to be like, oh gosh, you know, like, oh, what's your favorite band? Like, I've never heard of any music ever in my life. I like a lot of music, and I could, on a regular day, could just tell you, but if you ask me point blank, I'm gonna kind of panic. And so that's where I felt in this moment, like, oh, well, now you could ask a question. Like, okay, great. And just out of me came, am I on the right path? And there was kind of this gentle smile that came about. And what the response I got was, there is no right or wrong path. There is the long path or the short path. And I needed to hear that. And so clarity doesn't eliminate doubt. What it's meant to do is give you a steadier place to stand while doubt exists, using that as your center point, as what keeps you balanced as you move forward. Another piece of this that matters a lot to me is support. Because when I think about self-doubt and where it comes from, and oftentimes it comes from these places where we lacked support, where we had either other people or experiences that just like kind of wired our brain to think that we needed to second guess ourselves all the time, not trust our intuition, not trust our own voice, not trust our own values. And then we feel like we have to check in all the time of, oh, is this the right, when it like only impacts you sometimes. And so clarity is much harder to access in isolation. Most of us don't find our footing by thinking harder, right? You know, that's why they say two heads are better than one. And we find it by being witnessed, by being supported. That's where clarity comes from, by not having to rush ourselves, and sometimes having that outside perspective that, you know, we're just, or my favorite one is that sometimes we just need to talk it out loud. Like, the other person may not ever say anything, but we suddenly get clarity, or like, oh, actually, that's a terrible idea. Or, yeah, that really is a great idea now that I'm saying it out loud. You know, that's why support and connecting with others is such an important piece of that, especially as we prepare for transitions. And, you know, it's like we can't possibly know all of the information. We can't possibly have all of the answers or prepare for what our exact experience is going to be, because there's no way of knowing. Take it from someone whose birth and death experiences, just in my own personal life, didn't go at all the way that I prepared and planned for. But how I had different experiences when I found kind of that core clarity, and that I felt that I could speak for myself, and you know, I who knows if I was making the right decision or the wrong decision, but a decision had to be made. And that comes up a lot in various life transitions, whether we're finding new identity or making changes in relationships. So that's what I mean when I say I help people find clarity. Not answers, but steadiness. Not certainty, but trust in themselves as they move. The ability to be strong with their own voice. Be unafraid of having doubt, of asking questions, and seeking clarity, even if we don't ever get certainty. If you're waiting to feel completely certain before you take the next step, you might be waiting longer than you need to.